Welcome students to today's lecture. We'll be going through project financing and sustainability, that is BED4204. I who will be taking you through it through this session. I'm John Kenywa from the Department of Development and Social Studies and the School of Social Sciences. So today's lesson, the main aim of today's lesson is to look at what does this unit entail, what are the main objectives of the project financing and sustainability, what are the learning outcomes that you'd expect a student who have gone through this unit to be able to demonstrate, and then look at what is the layout, how has the unit been laid out to be rolled out to the student who are pursuing this unit. So to begin with, we look at what is the learning objective of this unit. The main objective for this unit is that it seeks to equip students with knowledge and skills necessary for financing projects and making those projects financially sustainable. Because you would find that in practice, when it comes to practice, and especially when you might end up working, you might come across potential either problems or challenges that the community or society where you're working in is facing, or even the nation. If you'll be working as in the government, you might find a situation where you have potentials. There is a problem that needs to be addressed, but can only be addressed through a project. But that project is very expensive. That currently maybe the government or the organization that you're working with may not be able to afford it at that point. And then, so it is at that point then you might want to have had skills and knowledge about how then can you also be able to get fundings to finance such kind of huge project that requires so much resource of money, and not only to finance it, but also to do so and sustainably, so that project is sustainably financed. And so the main aim here is to give you the skills and to give you the knowledge of how to go about financing that project. Now, when you have gone through this unit, what are some of the learning outcomes that you would expect from you, or what kind of knowledge or understanding would we expect you to be able to demonstrate, which will be an evidence, which will be the evidence that you have been able to go through this unit? One thing that you would be expected to be able to do after going through this unit is that you should be able to describe the fundamentals of project financing. Just an understanding of what does project financing entail, what is it all about, and what is its characteristics, things to do with who are the people who are normally involved in project financing, for what specific types of project would a project financing be recommended, and for which project would it not be recommended, and under what circumstances, and what is the terrain that would be expected to go through when you are trying to pursue financing a project using what we call the project financing. The other thing that you should be able to do once you have gone through this unit is that you should be able to illustrate the application of financial analysis. One thing that you will come to understand as you get deeper into this unit, when you will be discussing this unit, is that you will realize there's a lot of financial analysis that is normally involved when it comes to project financing. And this one will be able to look at it. Why would you require a lot of analysis, financial analysis, and why would you require to have knowledge and skills about conducting a little bit more complex financial analysis before you're able to commit or decide on what kind of financing is your project best suited for? The next thing that you should also be able to demonstrate or be able to do once you have gone through this unit is that you should be able to employ the principles of time value of money in cash flow forecasts. And the reason why we say time value of money is because most of these projects that are financed using project financing is that they are projects that are long term. They cover more than 15 to 20 to 50 years. They cover a long period of time. And when you're committing to invest in this kind of a project, is that you have anticipation that you're going to make, that there is money that's going to be made out of this project now and even into the future, in the next 15 years. How much money do you expect to be making in those many years? And what is the value of that money that you'll be making in the next 20 years? What's the value of that money today? And that is, and that's where the whole issue of time value of money then would come in, because what we say when it comes to time value of money is that a shilling today, 1 shilling today, is not equal to a shilling that you receive a year after. If someone gives you a shilling today, it's not the same as if someone gives you 1 shilling, say next year, same time, same place. The shilling that you receive next year, same time, same place, is going to be of lower value than a shilling that you received today. And so the whole aspect of time value of money then comes in very handy in this unit. The other thing that you should also be able to do once you have gone through this unit is that you should be able to conduct or even demonstrate or even explain or assist someone to conduct what we call risk analysis and risk management. And this is because whenever you are getting in something, whenever you're venturing into any form of investment or any form of a project, is that whereas today you might be sure about what is happening, you will not be sure about what is going to happen tomorrow. You will not be sure about what is going to happen in the next month or next year but one. How much less would you be able to tell what is going to happen in the next 20 years? And so then for you to be able to implement what you call project financing within a project is that you should also be good at doing what we call conducting risk analysis and also doing what we call risk management, because you also want to take care that the project that you're investing in or where you're committing this so much resources into is not in an environment where it's too risky that you might lose everything. But you'd want to be sure about what kind of risk do you expect to experience in the future, and how have you prepared yourself to be able to manage that kind of risk in your project. And so this unit will also seek to equip you with the skills about how to conduct risk analysis and how also to go forward, not only to do risk analysis, but also to do risk management. And we'll come to that in the course of this unit. Then the other thing that you should be able to do is that you should be able to have an understanding or be able to understand the application of basic accounting concepts and principles by the end of this, by the time that you'll be finishing this unit. And this one, if I can combine it with the last learning outcome, which is interpreting financial statements. These two, you should be able to get these skills by the time that you're going through this unit, because you realize that also when you're getting when you're applying for this form of financing, essentially, is that the potential funders to your project, what they would look at is your financial statements, and you should be able to know when you're by reading a financial statement of any institution or any organization to know in what status is its financial health. Is it performing? Is it not performing? And you should also be able to know some basics about what kind of financial statements would you expect within any institution, or that you would ask for or request for before you commit or before you get into partnership, or before they themselves agree to commit to working together with you or funding your project, essentially. Now, for us to be able to achieve the objective of this unit and also be able to achieve the learning outcomes, is that this unit has been divided into 14 sessions. And these sessions are laid out, looking at specific topics and subtopics within them. And that's what I will be taking us through. What would you expect to go through within those 14 sessions when you're taking this unit? And the first session, or the first lesson that you go through, is the basic introduction to project financing and sustainability. And in this case, you want to be looking at definition of terms, looking at the definition of basic terms, the terms that we expect that are going to keep on cropping up continuously as we continue, as we delve deeper into the unit. And in this case, we'll be looking at how do we define project finance? What is it? What is it all about? Looking at what are its features, what are its characteristics, what does it entail? Then we also look at why why in the first place would anybody study financial project finance? Why is it important for you as a student to be able to study and to have the skills about project financing, and especially in the context of the unit or the course that you're pursuing in school? Then we also be looking at the characteristics of project financing, and there are several of them. Then we also look at the merits and demerits of project financing. And the question of asking ourselves is that when you choose to implement a project, or when you choose to have a project being financed using what you call project financing, what are the benefits, what are the advantages, and what are some of the drawbacks of using project financing for that purpose? Then we also be looking at the parties to project financing, and this is looking at who are the stakeholders, who are some of the individuals or institutions or even persons that you'd expect are going to be involved or are going to have interests in playing a significant role in the project that you aim to implement using project financing. And what you find is that as we get into the unit, is that we have in any project financing project, in any project that's financed through using project financing, is that we have very many number of participants that are normally involved, and it will be important for you to be able to know who are these participants, and then because it is after you know, or you are able to know who are these participants, and then you're able to know at what point are you supposed to engage them, who are they, and be able also to lay out the rules of engagement with such kind of groups of individuals. And then we also look at, at the last lesson, we also look at some of the steps that you would follow, that would be expected. Of course, it may not be a cast on stone. It's not something that everybody would have to go through, but at least these steps are generally what you'd be expected to go through. They may not follow each other, but as you come to discuss them, is that there are things that you'd expect at some point before the whole project is completely funded using project financing, is that steps that you find yourself having to go through, essentially. Then after we have looked at the introduction, then you go direct into looking at time value of money concepts, reviewing the time value of money concept. And in this case, we'll be looking at the things to do with the present value of single and multiple cash flows. And then you also be looking at things to do with the future value of single and multiple cash flows. When it comes to the present value here, what of course we'll be looking at is the money that you get into the future. What is its equivalent today? That's what we refer to as present value. So if someone promises you to give you 10,000, say in 10 years time, what is that money? What is the equivalence of that money today? So that if you ask them to give you that money today, how much will they be required to give you to be deemed to have given you 10,000 in 10 years time? And that's what we refer to as the present value. And then you'll also be looking at what you call the future value of single and multiple cash flows. And for future value is what you might want to ask yourself. If you say, if you go and deposit, say probably 10,000 in a fixed account that is earning a certain percentage, interest percentage, how much is that money going to be in 10 years time? So the difference is, for the present value, you're looking at what does the future value what is the equivalence of money that you get in the future? What is the equivalent of that money today? And for the future value, of course, you'll be looking at if you invest a certain amount of money today, what will it grow into the next in the future? How much will you have it in the future? But you come to look at those things deeper when you be going through the unit. The other thing that we also look at under session 2 and 3, we also be looking at what you call the annuities and perpetuities. And we'll also be looking at the differences. What do you mean by annuities? What do you mean by perpetuities? And how would you use any of this to either be able to fund a project, to raise financing for your project, and such kind of things that you can be able to do using either of the two. Then we also look at application of time value of money on concepts time of value of money concept in project financing. That is, now that you have looked at these concepts and how they are applied, then we look at how then do you apply the skills that you get from being able to deal with present value, calculating present value and future value. How then are you able to apply these skills into into financing or into project financing, essentially. The other thing that we also look at is what we call depreciation of assets, because you would find in most cases when it comes to project financing, we do have different elements or different areas of project financing, and in some of possible project financing is that you might find that the partnership or the financing that is there, it is for a specific asset that is very expensive, that the institution or the organization that is getting into this project financing arrangement cannot be able to afford. Say, for example, in Kenya we have had a problem of having a cancer screening center, because some of the instrument that you require for cancer screening and even treatment, they are very, very expensive. Even some of most of our private hospitals cannot be able to afford. And so for them to be able to bring some of those machinery, medical machineries in Kenya, is that because they cannot be able to finance it by themselves, what they might want to look at, the options of using project financing to be able to get some of those assets here in their hospitals or even the government hospitals. And so then in that case, because you have been able to acquire an asset, a very expensive asset, using project financing, is that you might want to also be able to calculate at what rate does it depreciate, so that you also ask yourself, before it depreciates or before it becomes obsolete, has it been able to pay back its credit, and has it been able to bring you profit as an individual, as a person, or has it been able to assist you to achieve your projects or your programs objectives or goals that you had set for yourselves? Then after we have covered that, then we go to session 4, in which case then here we'll be looking at interpretation of financial statements. In this case, we'll go through, you'll be able to acquire skills on how to read financial statements, how to interpret them. You also learn how to prepare some of financial statements that you might be required to prepare when you are within your project arrangements, essentially. And this will be very, very important and very crucial for you to be able to do. Then in session 5, we'll be looking at the sources of funds. In this case, we'll be looking at what are some of the opportunities that exist that you can be able to pursue or get financing for a project that will be financed through what we call project financing. What are some of the available sources of financing that you can be able to pursue? Then we also be looking to evaluate some of these sources of funding, looking at what are the advantages, disadvantages, looking at some of the challenges when you're trying to pursue some of them, what are some of the hindrances, because you will find that some of this financing, they also come with conditions, they also come with requirements, or you might find that some of them are available, but they're not available for private institutions, but only maybe for the government. You might find that others are available, but not for the government or for the private, but maybe for the non-governmental or for the charity organizations. And so you might want to you might want to know, or it's important for you to know that what kind of financing exists out there, and is for which category of type of project that they are available for, and which conditions they come with, because all of them, they have their own conditions that you might want to be aware. Then we also look at methods of raising financing, because some of them, and it's also be within the same thing about the sources of financing. But we also have different methods that you can also be able to use within a project itself, or even as an individual, or even as an institution, or even as a government, that you might also want to use to raise funds. Then we also look at how to deal with funders or those who support a project. You would find that in most cases, and especially in this part of the developing world, where we have demand for the services that needs to be done, or demand for different projects that need to be set up, it's quite high. And so the demand from the finances, especially that are given from the donors, is usually very high. So you might want to, you as the project owner, it will be important for you to be able to know then how do you make sure that even as you're requesting for more financing, maybe for your project or to get additional assets within your project, how do you make sure that you do not get them fatigued, but you keep them engaged and excited to continue partnering with you, either as a government or even as a project or as an institution. Then after that, we will look at what we call the project assessment and investment appraisal methods. And in this case, we will look at things to do with project interactions. What sort of project interaction do you anticipate within the framework of the project that you are implementing at the moment? Then we also look at the fundamentals of project investment. Then you look at things to do with the feasibility considerations when you're choosing a project that you want to implement using project financing. And you also look at things to do with the project assessments. Because before you choose which project you want to finance, you might want to, it will be important for you to go through all these steps. To, first of all, find out whether that project is feasible, is it worth it, will it still be relevant, say even in the next 20 years, in the next 30 years, will it still be relevant? And will it, with the services that maybe are coming out of it, will they still be in demand? Will still people be interested to interact or to work with the project? And how does it interact with other existing projects, if it is within an institution or organization or even a government? And how is it laid out within the framework of the larger institutional framework within which it's being operated? Then after that, in session 7 and session 8, we look at the consideration in structuring project financing. And in this, we'll be looking at the determination of capital expenditure, financing requirement, how do you determine how much capital you need to begin with in your project. And then we also look at how much working capital would that project be required for it to keep on running. Because at some point, of course, you'd find that most of some of those that have given you the finances are also seeking to get back their money. They're also looking to get back their money, and so in as much as you'll be paying them the credit or the loan that have been forwarded to you or that have been awarded to you in the course of the project, project implementation period, is that you want to be careful that you don't pay too much and you leave yourself with so little that the project therefore becomes impossible for it to be able to run on a day-to-day basis. You still need to have enough working capital on a day-to-day basis for the project to continue being effective and earning the income that it's generating, essentially. Then also what you also be looking at here is what you call the project as a sensitivity analysis. And in this case, then you'll be looking at different elements within a project that might affect that you'll be required to identify that if slight changes that you want to identify, what level of changes should happen within these specific elements of the project. That if those changes happen and the project ceases to be feasible or to be something that is worth to be pursued. And that's what we refer to as sensitivity analysis. And when it comes to sensitivity analysis, is that it's conducted before the project is initiated, before you start implementing the project. You first of all have to identify which specific elements within your project, what is the level of sensitivity of all these different elements, and then be able to identify which one then would require special attention from your project to make sure that those specific elements are well taken care of, to make sure that you do not end up losing what money that have been invested in that project. Then we also be looking at what we call scenario analysis. And in this scenario analysis is that we'll be looking at the different possible scenarios in the future in most cases we do, generically we normally look at the best, what they call the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and the normal case scenario. Looking at in the future, what sort of scenarios do you anticipate that the project is going to experience? And under those scenarios, how does the project, how is either of those scenarios going to affect your project? And how are all those scenarios going to affect your cash flow that the project is going to be receiving in the future? And then that's when it's supposed to assist you make the judgment on whether to go ahead and implement the project or not, or choose something different. And like I was saying, that for both of these, project sensitivity analysis and for the scenario analysis, is that you do it before the project starts. Then in session 9 and session 10, we'll be looking at project risk management. And like we said, because these projects are normally long-term, and they are pegged on the cash inflows that will come into the future, then you want to be very sure, or you want to be very careful to understand what kind of risk is your project exposed to, and what would be the effect or the impact of some of these risks. And then decide as early as the project is starting, is that how do you deal with either of those risks, if at all they happen at all in the project in the future. And so at this case, we'll be looking at the concept of risk management, essentially. Then we also look at risk analysis. How do you analyze risks to determine which risks might be too expensive for your project, which risk might be too big for your project to take. And then you will be looking at the whole aspect of managing risk. Given this kind of risk that you're exposed to as a project, then how do you manage them? How do you mitigate, or how do you deal with them? And then we'll be looking at the aspect of risk management, planning, and control. Then, like we said, because this unit is about project financing and sustainability, we're looking at the element of project sustainability. How do you make sure that the project that you are implementing is sustainable into the future, that even if the financing withdraws, or that the project itself will be able to clear out its credit or loan that it had been awarded, but also that even after the end of the financing, that the project will still be sustainable. It still be able to have enough working capital. Will still be able to be providing the services that's it's aimed at providing. That is, if at all the project is intended to run, even after the financing has been withdrawn, or even after it has been able to clear its credit that has been awarded to it. And so in this case, then we'll be looking at some of the factors that lead to project sustainability. Then we'll also be looking at why projects fail. What are some of the factors that lead to project failure, so that you are aware of them and then you're able to take care of them way before the project starts, or in the course of the project implementation, that you're able to identify that this is a cause of project failure. And so you will be careful to deal with it and to make sure that it does not affect your project in that regard. And then we also be looking at the factors that lead to project sustainability. We also be looking at project sustainability options. What sort of options exist that you can be able to employ to make your project more sustainable from the very beginning. And then we also be looking at the challenges of project sustainability. And it is important for me to mention, even as we also discussed it when you'll be diving deeper into this unit, that project sustainability is normally implemented at the project planning stage. When you're setting out to go and implement that project, is that you should also have in mind the project sustainability concepts or project sustainability plan from the very onset. Then lastly, what we do is that then we look at several case studies. We'll be looking at examples of projects that have been financed using project financing, and being able to dissect them to see who are the stakeholders that were involved, why was the project financed using project financing, what kind of financing arrangement was there, who are the parties involved, how was the project managed, how was the financing managed, how was the repayment back period was managed, things to do with for what long period of time was it being implemented, what was the impact, and we ask ourselves, was it necessary for it to be implemented as a project financing, and look at the factors that made it a success, and what are some of the factors that would have affected it negatively if things were not done in the right way. So therefore, in that case, then that's what we'll be looking at, the project, the case studies, and we'll be looking at several of them. We'll be looking at some that are homegrown, that is in the country, that is in Kenya. We'll also be looking at some others in other countries, and the very fact that project financing itself has a history, and over time, it has changed in its nature and its norm and its structuring over time, and especially when we look at the involvement, that's partnership between government and government, say maybe like in the case of maybe Kenya and China, or Kenya and the US, or Kenya and the UK, the sort of the type of arrangement that used to exist maybe in the 1960s, 1950s, 1970s has changed and evolved over time, because both the institutions that are giving the funding, or the government that are giving the funding, and the government that are receiving the funding, all of them, they have learned over time maybe what works, what does not work, and so those lessons that have been gained over time have also in very important ways shaped then what we currently now have as the framework that now guides and informs what sort of financing arrangement that any of the parties that are involved would be more agreeable to engage in. Because you might find that whereas in the future, or whereas in the past, it was more difficult for governments to fund individual projects, or projects that are owned by individuals or private institutions. That currently there is more of a move towards towards a move of having that kind of arrangements being possible in cases where a case is a situation is well proven to be demanding in that case. And so in this unit, the mode of teaching or learning that you'll be having is that we'll be going to have through lectures like the one that you're having right now, and then you'll also be having group discussions that you're given an assignment. Then you're supposed to go maybe to the library or the internet, or whichever way that you might be able to do. Then you do your own research, prepare presentations as a group or even as individuals, depending on the kind of assignment that have been assigned. And then you come and make presentations that will be assessed in the course of the study. And then we also look at things to do with the case studies, looking at the examples and trying to dissect them in the context of what is covered within this unit. Then the other thing is on the assessment for this unit, is that we have three types of assessment, and the first one is what we refer to as the assignment, and this would include maybe the assignment that has been given for the group discussions or for the presentations, and for that you earn 15% of the marks. And then you have what we call the continuous assessment test. This is more of what you normally refer to as the CAT. That is, you sit and you have questions that you have to answer, and for that you also earn 15%. And then you have what you call the end of term exam, and in this you'll be able to earn 70%. And for you to pass this unit, it will require you to at least garner 40% of the marks. But of course you should aim to score higher. 40 is the bare minimum. Then there are several books that we would recommend that you can be able to refer, or even get them from the library to get more knowledge, or even for your personal study. And this includes the book by Kobe, that's his Principles of Project Finance in 2012. Yeah, you might also want to look at the book by John Turietis on Project Finance for Business Development. Then you might also want to look at the book from Stefano Gatti on project financing, project finance in theory and practice, that is designing and structuring. And then you might also want to look at the book by Benjamin St. on modern project finance. That's a case book it more of covers several cases, several case studies on project financing that you have that have been implemented in the past, and even that's still very informative. So with that, we come to the end of our lesson 1. Thank you.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.